Welcome to Bite-Sized Bios. This is meant to be a mini-sode that will accompany HDTH. Every week, I will pick a person from history and dive into their lives. All right, and welcome back to another episode of Bite-Sized Bios. This, of course, is the mini episode for How Did That Happen? Our most recent episode for How Did That Happen was on the Wild West. And this week we'll be talking about Viola Davis for our bite-sized bio. But before we get to that, as always stated, this is the mini episode for HDTH. We have to go back before we can go forward a little bit. There's not actually much that I wanted to bring up from last week's episode. I thought that was one of the longest HDTH on record. It was like I think 55 minutes. And for those of you, for like maybe the one person who listened to it before I changed it, the audio was crazy. I didn't realize, and I'm becoming more hip. We're still growing here, and then with all this stuff and I'm still learning every day about how to better produce podcasts, but somehow I just kept upping the volume on the pod, and then I turned it on my way home from work just to be like, I was listening to the episodes just to see what I'm putting out there, because it sounds different sometimes, obviously, because I didn't hear that before, but I turned it on and it was just like, it was crazy, to the point where I didn't have it on my agenda, but I went directly home and like fixed the audio and then uploaded a new episode. But that's just some inside baseball. But before, like I said, we get to the actual episode, the one thing that I really wanted to talk about, I think, was just, I didn't mention there's a lot of things that were not mentioned, let's be honest. I mean, there's so that's, even in an hour, you can't cover all the things of the Wild West, but the guns, I was mentioning one gun in particular, the most famous gun, I believe, was the Colt 45 revolver, and it is it's called the Peacemaker, I think, is the main one that became very famous and kind of ubiquitous in the Wild West. And it's kind of started that way because it was issued initially as a U.S. Army revolver in 1873. So that's kind of what made it, I think, like the gun that everybody has. I feel like it's the same way now almost with like the 9mm because cops have them. That's just my opinion. I feel like because you see them everywhere with them, that just everybody, it's one of the main guns you see that people own. I feel like it was the same way back then. Everyone who was in the Army had a Colt 45. Your dad comes home from the Army, you see that gun, that's what you know as a gun. That's the first gun you want. You keep buying it, yada yada yada. What's crazy is that they still make them now, and they've been going for like 150 years, something like that, 155 years. It's very interesting. But what I didn't know, and then this is I don't know much about guns. I'll be honest. I really don't. I didn't know that the Colt 45, it's pertaining to the bullet. I didn't realize that because because the Colt 45 was initially made by the Colt Patent Arms Company or whatever, back in the early 1870s. But now there's multiple gun makers like Smith & Wesson and Remington and other places like that. They make Colt 45 kind of edition revolver that fits the Colt bullet. This is news to me and probably boring to anybody who's actually listening. So we'll move on from that. There wasn't much else I wanted to mention about the Wild West. I love, cowboy movies. I did, in fact, like I said, go back and watch some of those Clint Eastwood movies. I went back and watched, what movie did I watch? I only watched one. What was it called? Oh, it was the Josie Wales was the Josie Wales one, I think. I watched that, and it's man, I love me some good shoot 'em up. Some good shoot 'em ups. But yeah, so I don't think there's much else to say before we get to the episode. As always, htthappen.com to find all your extras. I've been getting a little bit better about putting more stuff on there. I've been kind of trying to get the episodes back up to where they were. They're having a little bit of an issue finding a place to produce my title cards at, but that's also just more inside baseball. That's unnecessary. But yeah, HTThappen for everything, at HTThappen for all the socials. I am really close to putting out that other podcast that I'm going to release here pretty soon. I just finished the 4th episode of it, so I guess I'll go ahead and tell you. I don't think I've told what it's actually called. It's called Conquering Netflix is what it's called. It's going to be a show that's about just watching as much Netflix as possible with the theoretical idea of watching the entire Netflix catalog. We'll see, but it's going to have it's got a rating system, with 3 episodes or 3 different titles a week or either bi-weekly. I'm not sure. So that's a whole different thing. But yeah, so let's stop with the rambling and get on to our episode this week, which is for Viola Davis. And without further ado, as we're known to do, here is the episode.
There's one place that all the people with the greatest potential are gathered. One place and that's the graveyard. People ask me all the time, what kind of stories do you want to tell, Viola? And I say, exhume those bodies. Exhume those stories. The stories of the people who dreamed big and never saw those dreams to fruition. People who fell in love and lost. I became an artist, and thank God I did, because we are the only profession that celebrates what it means to live a life.
All right. We are here today to talk about Viola Davis. Just heard the clip that we just heard was from her 2017 Oscar acceptance speech for Best Actress. I believe it was for the movie Fences. She is a very dynamic person. She's one of those who's got an EGOT, you know, the Emmy, the Grammy, and the Oscar and the Tony, which is, there's only a few people that have that. She also has, I think, what they call the Triple Crown of acting, which is everything but the Grammy. You know, because there's only two people that have that. I didn't know that until I was doing this research. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. So she was born in 1965 on a plantation in South Carolina. Her grandparents were sharecroppers who raised 11 children in a single-room house. Her parents named there was May Alice Davis and Dan Davis. Her parents moved her to Rhode Island, and the rest of her siblings to Rhode Island not long after Davis was born. I think she was the youngest, or no, she was the second youngest of 6 children. 4 sisters and a brother is how that breaks down. Her father, Dan, regularly abused his wife. And if you've read her book, you would have a very good idea of this. If you haven't, I would definitely say it's worth your time. Even if you don't know who she is, she's an interesting, her story is compelling to say the least. It is certainly worth listening to, which is what I did. I didn't actually read it. I listened to her audio book, which is read by her. And that's the best format for that type of thing. When you have someone reading their own biography, I feel like you get more out of it. But back to it. Her father would regularly abuse his wife, like seriously, like I've never understood this, like beating this woman, stabbed her in the neck, you know, just sent his wife to the hospital multiple times. Davis has vivid memories of coming home and just seeing drops of blood leading to the front door, and just like knowing something has gone down. Her mom would then leave the house. Obviously, sometimes she would run away from her husband, and her father would enlist his children to come look for her so that he could end up trying to kill her. Basically, it's wild. And so this is all happening in the 70s. The family was very poor. They rarely had heat. Like she was really, and I think the way Oprah describes it is, Oprah thought she grew up poor. She said Viola Davis grew up po. Like, I mean, and to be, they're kind of making light of it, but there was she was like the poor kid in school. She was the kid who came to school smelling like urine. She was the kid who she had nothing. She talks about, I would tell you, it's worth checking out. I couldn't find a clip of it online, but on the Netflix, on Netflix, she gets interviewed by Oprah, and it's about her new book that's coming out, and she talks about just like hearing like the rats just like eat her dolls at night while she was trying to sleep, and like being afraid. I guess she said they had heard that in New York City rats were eating babies, so like they were like afraid the rats were going to eat them because the rats would hop up on their bed, so they would like tie like sheets and towels around their necks at night to not get murdered by these rats while they're trying to sleep. It's not funny, but it's sad, which makes it kind of funny. I'm not sure if that makes any sense. But so this girl grew up just really, really below the poverty line. When she was 14, she participated in an Upward Bound program for low-income high school students, where an acting coach encouraged her to pursue acting professionally. Later, a teacher recommended she apply to a national performing arts competition. She auditioned with 2 pieces from Every Man and Runaways, which she writes had a lot of great monologues about feeling abandoned, which was something that she was very familiar with. And so acting was always a part of her. She's been quoted, I think, when I'm not going to, this is more of a paraphrase, is just saying that it allowed her to just, I don't know, she felt a calling for it, and I'm envious, because maybe podcasting is my calling, who knows, I'm not sure, but I haven't felt a calling for many things in my life. Truthfully, I always felt sports was a calling for a while, and And then, now I'm just kind of listlessly out here, but that's a whole different story. Back to Viola Davis. Her career really began, you could say, in probably 1992. That was her first professional stage role she got. Was in an off-Broadway production of William Shakespeare's As You Like It, which is a pretty cool title. She would actually, before she went to Juilliard, she had already, I think, completed school and was working as a teacher, she said, but that was depressing her day and night because it was stifling her artistic, dreams, all the impulses that she had. So she quit that and went to Juilliard in 93. She's always been, she said there that she had an issue with, I guess, her identity, trying to be this artist, this great artist, while also trying to, I guess, having to stifle her blackness, because that was a time when that was not looked upon favorably, I guess. You kind of had to, she said that she felt that she had to separate herself from herself in order to be successful. But yeah, so she got her first professional stage role in 92. Let's see. She would do a lot of stage throughout the 90s. She won an Obie Award in 99 for her performance as Ruby McCullum in Everybody's Ruby. She was in an August Wilson play named King Henry II. She made her Broadway debut in 1996 in an August Wilson's play of Seven Guitars. And she would actually, what's wild is she would end up winning her Oscar playing in an August Wilson play that had become a movie. And full disclosure, I actually acted in the same play when I was in high school and played the leading role that James Earl Jones and Denzel Washington made famous. You can find it at my local high school in Virginia Beach, Virginia, if you're interested. But yeah, let's see what else we have. She'd be in some movies in the early 2000s, but nothing compared to what she would go on to as time would go on. She was in Antoine Fisher in 2002. Her major film breakthrough was in the movie Doubt in 2008, which stars a bunch of stars in there. It's her. Who is it? Is it Meryl Streep? Philip Seymour Hoffman is in that movie. I'm going to play a clip here in a second because that's just it to kind of give you an idea. She was nominated for Best Supporting Actress for this movie, but would not win for this particular role. But I just thought that this is such a good movie. I'm going to go ahead and play a clip for you now.
I believe this man is creating, or may have already brought about, an improper relationship with your son.
I don't know.
I know. I am right.
Why you gotta know something like that for sure when you don't?
What kind of mother are you?
Excuse me, but you don't know enough about life to say a thing like that, sister.
I know enough.
You know the rules maybe, but that don't cover it.
I know what I won't accept.
You accept what you gotta accept and you work with it.
This man is in my school.
Well, he's gotta be somewhere. Maybe he's doing some good too.
After the boys.
Or maybe some of them boys want to get caught.
So, I mean, whoa, right? Just, if you haven't seen Doubt, I'm not sure if it's on Netflix. I watched it on DVD when I was in college years and years ago. Blown away. And more backstory if you didn't quite pick it up from the scene. I think this woman's child is possibly being molested by the priest, and the Meryl Streep's character who's playing a nun, I think, is trying to tell her about it, but she's basically just like, for the betterment of my child, so he can get the education that he needs, and also because he may or may not be homosexual himself, let's just look the other way. So many layers to that movie. But she would start doing stuff like that. She was in the movie The Help in 2011, which I think is another thing that people always remember her for. Like I said, she would win an Oscar for the movie Fences. I believe it was in 2016. So they say she's actually the most successful black actress in the history of the Academy, which I didn't know, but I mean, that would make sense. She's got a lot of accolades. As far as her personal life, she is married to an actor named Julius Tenen, who I couldn't call off the top what he's done, but when I saw his picture, I was like, oh, I know that guy, but I still couldn't tell you what he's been in. But he's that kind of guy. You Google his name, you're like, I've seen him before. She's married to that guy. They've been together for about 20 years. They have, I think, 3 kids, but 2 are from a previous relationship, one of Tenen's previous relationships. I think they have 1 actual kid together. As far as what is she doing now, she just she was in The Woman King, which is on Netflix. Pretty good movie. It is about kind of like it's about these these women, female warriors in Africa 300 years ago, 400 years ago, but it's also about the the transatlantic slave trade, about like these were the people who were selling slaves to the Europeans to then take them back to America. And we've always heard that, and then that was a part of it, that there were certain tribes in Africa that was actually selling slaves, and I feel like it should have been marketed more with that tone, because I had to find that out, and I would have definitely probably even gone to see it in theaters if I'd known that before, but I've seen it now. It's pretty good. She's also she just played Michael Jordan's mom in the movie Air, which I think is also on Netflix. Pretty good. Did some research, found out that that's not accurate the way it went down. She didn't really play as big a role in the process of making the Air Jordan as they made her out to be. Not making it, but she was supposedly in the movie is supposed to be the one who's instrumental in like getting her son royalties for all of his namesakes and licenses and stuff like that, when it turns out probably not the case. And the last thing I'll say about her is, I mean, obviously read her book. I'm telling you, man, it is worth it. Like I said, even if you don't know her, even if you're not a fan of her work, reading it and understanding her may actually help and make you a little more compassionate to her plight. But How to Get Away with Murder, to me, is the top thing for her. I loved that show. I may even start a rewatch here pretty soon. And because I always call it by its abbreviation name, HTGAWM, Hot Gom. That's what I was when I was always like, I'm watching some Hot Gom tonight. But that I love that show. But yeah, so that's Viola Davis in a nutshell. Hope you guys enjoyed it. All right, that was another episode of Bite Size Bios. Hope you guys liked it. Learned a lot about Viola Davis. Hope it kind of piqued your interest. She's a very interesting person. I liked her before I knew her story, and knowing her story makes me like her even more. When you find that with a lot of people, not everybody. Some people, you learn their story, it makes you like them less. She's not one of those. Definitely check out the stuff that she has. Don't think there's much else to say. Like I said, there's going to be a new podcast on the rise here from the HTT Happen family coming out here pretty soon. But not 100% sure based off the release of this episode when that will actually happen. But you can find all the extras over at htthappen.com, and even when, like I said, the new podcast comes out, you can find all of that over at htthappen.com as well. Like and subscribe wherever you hear this. Give us 5 stars if you liked it, 2 stars if you didn't, and tell us why you didn't like it, because constructive criticism is always welcome. Thank you guys for pressing play. Like I said, I appreciate it from week to week. I always do. Yeah, we'll see you in we'll see you next week with the next How Did That Happen?